A poor single mom slept in her car with her sick baby, praying no one would notice, but when the parking guard leaned in to help, she had no idea he was really the billionaire owner. So what happens when kindness, secrets, and survival collide in one life-changing night? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Lena's hands trembled as she turned off the engine of her weathered blue sedan. The parking lot lights cast long shadows across the empty spaces, making the towering office building seem even more imposing in the darkness. She glanced at her watch. 11:42 p.m. The digital display's soft green glow reminded her how long this day had been. A weak cough from the back seat made her heart clench. Noah, bundled in his favorite yellow blanket, stirred restlessly in his car seat. His cheeks were flushed with fever, and even in the dim light, she could see the sheen of sweat on his forehead. "Shh, baby, it's okay," she whispered, reaching back to stroke his warm cheek. "Mommy's right here." The night air seeped through the car's aging weather stripping, bringing with it a bone-deep chill that made Lena pull her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders. She'd parked in the furthest corner of the lot, hoping to avoid attention. The last thing she needed was security telling her to move along. Not tonight, not with Noah so sick. Her fingers found the small silver cross hanging from her neck, a gift from her grandmother. "Please," she prayed softly, her voice barely a whisper in the quiet car. "Please help us get through this night. Keep my baby safe. That's all I ask." Noah whimpered in his sleep, and Lena twisted around in her seat to check on him again. The streetlight caught the tear tracks on his feverish face, and her throat tightened. She'd used the last of her money to buy children's fever medicine at the discount store, but it didn't seem to be helping much. She reached for her phone. 12% battery left. The screen showed a string of rejection texts from potential landlords. "Need first and last month's rent, plus security deposit. Must show proof of income 3 times the rent. No children under 5. Each message felt like another door slamming in her face. The heat from the now silent engine gradually faded, leaving the car's interior growing colder by the minute. Lena pulled an old fleece blanket from the passenger seat and draped it over herself, trying to conserve what little warmth remained. Through the windshield, she could see the gleaming office building towering above them. Its windows reflected the city lights like countless stars, a stark contrast to the darkness she felt inside. Just last week, she'd been in an apartment, small and rundown, but a home. Now here she was, sharing the back corner of a corporate parking lot with empty delivery trucks and forgotten shopping carts. Noah coughed again, the sound rattling in his tiny chest. Lena unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed into the back seat, careful not to wake him. She adjusted his blanket, making sure his feet were covered, and gently felt his forehead. Still too warm. "I'm so sorry, sweet boy," she whispered, smoothing his dark curls back from his face. "I'm trying. I promise I'm trying." The digital clock on the dashboard clicked over to midnight. Lena settled back against the seat, keeping one hand resting protectively on Noah's small chest, feeling its rise and fall. She tried to ignore the growling in her stomach. She'd given Noah the last of their food at dinner, a half-pack of crackers and some apple juice. A gust of wind rocked the car slightly, and Lena instinctively pulled Noah's blanket higher. The parking lot was almost empty now, just a few cars scattered across the vast expanse of concrete. In the distance, she could hear the hum of late-night traffic, the occasional siren, the rhythm of a city that never truly slept. Her eyelids grew heavy as exhaustion began to overtake her. The events of the past week played through her mind like a bitter slideshow. The eviction notice, packing their belongings into garbage bags. The sympathetic but firm voice of her supervisor telling her they were cutting back hours. She'd been so careful with money, working every extra shift she could get, but it hadn't been enough. Noah stirred in his sleep, making small, distressed sounds. Lena hummed softly, an old lullaby her mother used to sing. The familiar melody filled the car's cramped interior, a small comfort in the darkness. "Rest now, sweet baby," she sang quietly, her voice catching. "Angels, watch over you." The words of the lullaby faded as she noticed movement in her side mirror. A beam of light swept across the parking lot. A flashlight. Her heart began to race. Security. She should have known they'd do rounds, even at this hour. Lena held her breath, hoping the guard would pass by, but the heavy footsteps grew closer. The beam of light played across her car's rear window, then moved to the side. She pulled Noah's blanket higher, as if it could somehow hide them both from view. Through the foggy window, she could see the approaching figure, uniform dark against the lot's fluorescent lighting. The shadow loomed larger as it neared her car, and Lena's hand tightened protectively around Noah's small one. The footsteps stopped. A shadow fell across her window. The knuckles rapped softly against the window, making Lena jump. Her heart thundered in her chest as she glanced back at Noah, still fitfully sleeping. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. With trembling fingers, she pressed the button to roll down the window, bracing herself for harsh words and demands to leave. Cold air rushed in as the window lowered. The beam of the flashlight dropped to the ground, no longer blinding her. Through the gap, she saw the guard crouch down, bringing himself to her eye level. His face was weathered but kind, with crow's feet at the corners of his eyes and silver threading through his dark hair. "Evening, ma'am," he said quietly, his voice gentle. "Everything all right in there?" Lena swallowed hard, her throat tight. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We'll leave. Just give me a minute, too." "Your little one doesn't sound too good," he interrupted, nodding toward the back seat where Noah's labored breathing was audible. His eyes held concern rather than judgment. "Is he sick?" The unexpected kindness in his voice made Lena's eyes burn with tears she refused to let fall. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "How long has he had that cough?" 3 days, Lena managed. "The fever started yesterday." The guard, his name tag read Daniel, seemed to consider this for a moment. "Wait here," he said, straightening up. "Don't leave." Lena watched through the foggy window as he walked back to the security booth, his flashlight beam bouncing across the pavement. She could see him moving around inside the small structure, reaching for something on a shelf. Part of her wanted to start the car and drive away, but where would she go? And Noah needed rest, not another aimless drive through the city. Daniel returned carrying a battered thermos and what looked like a folded blanket. He crouched by her window again. "It's just chamomile tea," he said, offering the thermos through the window. "Nothing fancy, but it's hot. And this," he held up a thick wool blanket, worn but clean, "stays in the booth for cold nights. You need it more than I do." Lena stared at the offerings, her hands frozen in her lap. Pride warred with desperation inside her. "I can't, please," Daniel said softly. "That old car heater's not going to keep up with the cold tonight. And it sounds like you could use something warm, too." A particularly harsh cough from Noah seemed to make the decision for her. Lena reached out and took the thermos, her cold fingers brushing against Daniel's warm ones. The heat from the container immediately began to seep into her hands. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Daniel carefully passed the blanket through the window. It was heavier than it looked, and the wool had a faint scent of cedar. "There's a small clinic on Maple Street," he said. "Opens at 8. They work with folks who can't afford regular doctors. Just in case you need it." Lena clutched the blanket to her chest, overwhelmed by this unexpected kindness. "Why are you helping us?" Daniel's eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. "Because someone once helped me when I needed it." He glanced at Noah, who had finally settled into a more peaceful sleep. "Try to get some rest. I'll be in the booth if you need anything." He stood and walked back to his post, his footsteps quiet on the concrete. Through the booth's window, Lena could see him settle into his chair, occasionally glancing in their direction. With shaking hands, Lena unscrewed the thermos cap. Steam rose from the golden liquid, carrying the soothing scent of chamomile. She took a careful sip, and the warm tea seemed to thaw something frozen inside her. Moving to the back seat, she spread the wool blanket over herself and Noah, tucking it carefully around his small form. Noah stirred slightly, his breathing easier now in the warmth of the extra blanket. "Mama?" he mumbled. "I'm here, baby," she whispered, stroking his cheek. "Go back to sleep." From her new position, she could see Daniel in his booth, his face thoughtful as he watched over the quiet parking lot. The tea's warmth spread through her body, and for the first time in days, Lena felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen, just a little. In the soft glow of the security booth's light, Daniel sat quietly, his eyes occasionally drifting to the old blue sedan in the corner. His weathered hands wrapped around his own cup of tea, steam rising in the cold night air as he kept his silent vigil. The morning sun pierced through the windshield like needles in Lena's tired eyes. She hadn't slept more than a few minutes at a time, too worried about Noah's worsening condition. His small body radiated heat against her chest, where she'd held him all night, trying to keep him comfortable in the cramped back seat. "Shh, baby, it's okay," she whispered as Noah whimpered, his face flushed with fever. When she touched his forehead, her heart clenched. He was burning up worse than before. The cheap children's fever medicine she'd given him last night hadn't helped much. Lena pulled out her phone, finger hovering over the emergency contacts. The ER was only 10 minutes away, but the thought of the bill made her stomach turn. She had exactly $43 to her name, and the last hospital visit for Noah's ear infection had cost over $1,000, even with the sliding scale payment plan. Noah's weak cough snapped her attention back to him. His usually bright eyes were glassy, and his curls stuck to his forehead with sweat. "Oh, sweetie," she murmured, feeling helpless. What kind of mother couldn't even take her baby to the doctor when he needed it? A gentle tap on the window made her start. Daniel stood there, holding a paper bag in one hand and what looked like a grocery store plastic bag in the other. He waited patiently as she climbed back into the front seat and rolled down the window. "Thought you might still be here," he said, his voice low and kind. "I always make too much breakfast. Brought some extras if you'd like them." He held up the paper bag. "Just some oatmeal and fruit. And water." He lifted the plastic bag with several bottles inside. Lena's pride warred with her desperate need to feed her son something warm. Noah hadn't eaten well since getting sick, and her own stomach was growling loud enough to wake the dead. That's very kind, but—" "Please," Daniel said, not pushing the bags at her, but simply holding them out. "It'll just go to waste otherwise. I can never finish it all myself." The lie was obvious. Who regularly made too much oatmeal? But his pretense gave her a shred of dignity to cling to. Lena took the bags with trembling hands. "Thank you." "How's the little guy doing?" Daniel asked, peering concerned into the back seat where Noah lay listlessly. "His fever's worse," Lena admitted, her voice cracking. "I don't know what to do. I should take him to the doctor, but—" She trailed off, ashamed to admit she couldn't afford it. Daniel's weathered face creased with worry. He seemed to be weighing something in his mind. "There's a free clinic about 6 blocks from here," he said carefully, "on Mason Street. They open at 9. Sometimes there's a wait, but they don't turn anyone away." Hope flickered in Lena's chest. "Really? They won't? They don't need insurance?" "No insurance needed. They work on donations." He pulled out a small notepad from his pocket and wrote down an address. "Here, they're good people there." Lena took the paper, clutching it like a lifeline. "I don't know how to thank you. For everything. The tea last night, and now this." "Don't mention it," Daniel said, waving away her thanks. He glanced at his watch. "I should get back to my post. The morning rush will start soon." Lena opened the paper bag, the warm smell of cinnamon oatmeal making her mouth water. There were 2 plastic containers inside, still hot, and a banana. She crawled into the back seat again, gathering Noah into her lap. "Look, sweetie, some nice warm breakfast." She opened one container, stirring the thick oatmeal to cool it. Noah stirred at the smell, opening his eyes. "That's it, baby. Just a little bit?" She managed to coax a few spoonfuls into him, relief washing over her when he started to show interest in eating. The water helped too. She hadn't realized how dehydrated they both were until she took her first sip. As she fed Noah small bites, tears welled up in her eyes. How had it come to this? Living in her car, dependent on the kindness of a stranger, unable to provide the basic care her baby needed. She had to find work today. Had to. The temp agency opened at 8. She would be first in line. They always needed office cleaners, and she could do that. She'd done it before. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to Noah, who was finally eating with something like his usual appetite. "Mommy promises. We'll figure this out." Through the windshield, she could see Daniel in his booth, talking on the phone. He had his back turned, but something about his posture seemed intent, focused, probably reporting to his supervisor about the vagrant woman in the parking lot. Lena quickly packed up the remaining food. They needed to leave before the office workers started arriving. She couldn't bear the thought of their stares, their judgment. Besides, she had to get Noah to that clinic, and then somehow find work somewhere in this city. There had to be a job that would let her take care of her son. She strapped Noah into his car seat, grateful that he seemed a little stronger after eating. The oatmeal had been perfect, warm and not too sweet, easy on his stomach. She started the car, praying it wouldn't choose today to break down. As she pulled out of the parking space, she saw Daniel end his call and turned to watch them leave. He raised his hand in a small wave, and she returned it, fighting back a fresh wave of tears at this simple gesture of acknowledgement, of kindness. Through her rearview mirror, she watched him grow smaller, still standing outside his booth, watching until they turned the corner and disappeared from view. The downtown streets stretched endlessly before Lena as she trudged from one office building to the next, Noah bundled against her chest in his worn baby carrier. The morning's rejections weighed heavy on her shoulders. Not hiring. Experience required. Full-time only. The words blurred together after the 10th attempt. Noah stirred against her, his fever still lingering, though not as fierce as the night before. The medicine Daniel had brought helped, but she needed more than temporary fixes. She needed a real solution. "Just one more try, sweetie," she whispered to Noah, adjusting his little knit cap. The glass and steel building before her stretched toward the sky, the same one where she'd spent the night in the parking lot. At least the lobby would be warm. The marble floor gleamed under bright lights as Lena stepped inside, her worn sneakers squeaking slightly. The reception desk curved elegantly, staffed by a woman in a crisp blazer who barely glanced up from her computer. "Good morning," Lena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was wondering if you had any job openings." The receptionist, her nameplate read Miss Thompson, gave Lena a once-over, her gaze lingering on Noah and Lena's wrinkled clothes. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I was hoping to fill out an application." Lena shifted Noah higher on her chest, conscious of how out of place they must look in the pristine lobby. "We don't accept walk-ins," Miss Thompson said flatly. "All positions require online applications through our corporate website, and candidates must have relevant experience in their field." She turned back to her computer screen, clearly dismissing them. Lena's throat tightened. "Please," she said softly. "I'll take any position. I'm a hard worker. I learn quickly." "Ma'am, as I said, everything all right here?" A familiar voice cut through the tension. Daniel appeared from a side hallway, his security uniform neat but unremarkable. Miss Thompson straightened slightly. "Just explaining our hiring procedures to this applicant." Daniel nodded thoughtfully, his eyes meeting Lena's for a brief moment. "Actually," he said, "I heard Jerry and maintenance mention they're short-handed on the evening cleaning crew. Lot of flu going around." The receptionist frowned. "Well, yes, but might be worth having her talk to Jerry," Daniel continued mildly. "Better than leaving them understaffed, especially with the board meeting next week." Miss Thompson's expression shifted slightly. "I suppose." She turned back to Lena. "Wait here." She picked up her phone, pressed a few buttons, and spoke quietly into the receiver. Lena stood awkwardly, bouncing Noah gently as he began to fuss. Daniel remained nearby, seemingly focused on adjusting his radio earpiece. A few minutes later, a heavy-set man in work clothes emerged from the elevator. "You're looking for cleaning work?" he asked Lena directly. "Yes, sir." Lena straightened her shoulders. "I have experience. I cleaned offices part-time during college, and I've done housekeeping work." Jerry studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Evening shift, 6 p.m. to midnight. Can you start tomorrow?" Lena's heart leaped. "Yes, absolutely." "Got childcare?" He gestured to Noah. "My neighbor watches him evenings," Lena said quickly, the lie burning her tongue. She'd figure something out. She had to. Jerry scratched his chin. "Pays $15 an hour, temporary contract to start, 3-month probation period. You'll need to pass a background check and drug test." "No problem," Lena said, hope rising in her chest. She had a clean record. It was one of the few things she had going for her. "Come with me to fill out the paperwork," Jerry said, already turning toward a side office. "Thompson, get her the new hire forms." The receptionist's lips thinned, but she pulled out a folder and handed it over. As Lena followed Jerry, she glanced back at Daniel, who gave her a small nod before returning to his post by the door. The next hour passed in a blur of forms and signatures, emergency contacts, tax documents, direct deposit information. Lena's hand cramped from writing, but she didn't dare complain. Noah dozed against her chest as she carefully filled in each line, triple-checking every detail. "All right," Jerry said finally, collecting the stack of papers. Drug test today if you can manage it. Lab's 2 blocks over. Start tomorrow at 6 sharp. Sandra will train you." He handed her a badge with "Temporary" stamped across it in red letters. Lena clutched the badge like it was made of gold. "Thank you, Mr. Jerry. Thank you so much." He waved off her thanks. "Be on time. Work hard. Keep your head down. That's all I ask." He paused. "And call me if you can't make it. We've had too many no-shows lately. I'll be here," Lena promised fervently. Every shift, she left the office in a daze, Noah still sleeping soundly. The lobby seemed brighter somehow, the marble less cold beneath her feet. As she pushed through the revolving door into the afternoon sun, she hugged Noah closer. "Things are looking up, baby," she whispered. "Mommy's got a job. We're going to be okay." Behind her, through the lobby windows, Daniel watched her go, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he picked up the phone on his desk, already dialing the personnel department to ensure her paperwork would be processed quickly. The evening sky had turned a deep purple when Lena arrived for her first cleaning shift, pushing Noah's stroller through the employee entrance. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the visitor badge the security desk had given her. The building felt different now, less intimidating but somehow more overwhelming, knowing she'd be responsible for maintaining its pristine appearance. "Welcome back," Daniel's familiar voice called out softly. He emerged from the shadow of his parking booth, now wearing the same Navy uniform as the other building staff. "Let me show you around before your shift starts." Lena nodded gratefully, though uncertainty clouded her features. I mean, what about Noah? I couldn't find anyone to watch him tonight." "Don't worry about that," Daniel said, his eyes crinkling with warmth. "There's a staff lounge on the second floor. Lots of the evening crew bring their kids when childcare falls through. It's perfectly fine." Relief washed over Lena's face as she followed Daniel through the building's service corridors. Noah babbled quietly in his stroller, taking in the new surroundings with wide eyes. The halls were quiet at this hour, their footsteps echoing against the polished floors. "First stop," Daniel announced, pushing open a set of double doors. "The cafeteria closes at 5, but staff can help themselves to leftover meals. Company policy. Better than letting good food go to waste." Lena's breath caught as she took in the sight. The cafeteria was modern and spotless, with several warming trays still set up along one wall. The smell of home-cooked food made her stomach clench painfully, reminding her how long it had been since she'd had a proper meal. "Really?" she whispered, afraid to believe it. "We can just take some?" Daniel nodded, already grabbing 2 clean plates from a nearby stack. The evening crew always eats first. "Here." He began filling a plate with portions of roasted chicken, vegetables, and rice. "This little guy looks hungry too." Noah reached out from his stroller, making grabbing motions at the food. For the first time that day, Lena let out a small laugh. "He definitely island. I've only had formula for him lately." "The chicken's nice and soft," Daniel said, preparing a small plate with tiny portions. Perfect for someone learning to eat solid foods. They settled at a corner table, and Lena carefully lifted Noah into her lap. The baby's eyes lit up at the sight of real food, his tiny hands reaching eagerly for the small pieces of chicken Daniel had cut up. "Slowly, sweet boy," Lena murmured, helping Noah grasp the food. Her own hands shook slightly as she took her first bite, closing her eyes at the simple pleasure of a warm meal. Daniel busied himself with some paperwork, giving them privacy while staying nearby. He glanced up occasionally, a gentle smile touching his lips as he watched Noah's enthusiasm for the food. "I can't thank you enough," Lena said softly after they'd finished eating. "For everything. The job. This meal." "You don't need to thank me," Daniel replied, his voice equally quiet. "Everyone deserves a chance, Lena. And speaking of chances, let me show you where you and Noah can set up for the evening." The staff lounge was cozy and well-maintained, with comfortable couches and a small kitchenette. A few other cleaning staff members were gathering their supplies, offering friendly nods to Lena as Daniel showed her around. "Maria brings her daughter here sometimes," Daniel explained, pointing to a corner that had clearly been set up for children. There were some worn but clean toys, and a couple of folded blankets on a padded bench. "You can make Noah comfortable here while you work. The night supervisor checks in regularly, and there's always someone nearby." Lena's throat tightened with emotion as she watched Noah immediately crawl toward the toys. He picked up a soft blue elephant, hugging it close with a delighted squeal. the first real laugh she'd heard from him in days. "Look at you, sweet boy," she whispered, kneeling beside him. She spread one of the blankets on the floor, creating a makeshift bed that was infinitely more comfortable than the car seat he'd been sleeping in. Noah continued playing with the elephant, giggling as he made it dance in the air. The sound of his laughter seemed to fill the room with light, chasing away some of the shadows that had haunted Lena's heart. At the doorway, Daniel paused, taking in the scene with quiet satisfaction. His smile, unseen by Lena, held a warmth that went far beyond the role of a simple parking guard. He watched Noah's continued giggles, the baby's joy, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, even the smallest ones. The evening supervisor arrived then, ready to show Lena her cleaning route and procedures. As she gathered her supplies and prepared to begin her shift, Noah was already starting to doze off, the blue elephant clutched firmly in his tiny arms. Lena tucked the blanket around him, placing a gentle kiss on his forehead before standing to face her new responsibilities. Daniel remained at the door, his presence both watchful and unobtrusive. The sound of Noah's soft giggles still echoed in the room, a precious moment of happiness in what had been a very long week. His smile lingered as he watched over them, a silent guardian in the growing darkness of evening. The morning sun had barely risen when Lena woke to a gentle tapping on her car window. Her heart jumped, expecting to see Daniel's kind face. Instead, she found herself staring into the stern expression of a woman in a crisp business suit, holding a badge that made Lena's blood run cold. Child Protective Services. "Miss Carter?" The woman's voice was professional, but held an edge of authority that sent chills down Lena's spine. "I'm Margaret Wells from CPS. We received a concerned call about your living situation with your infant son." Lena's arms instinctively tightened around Noah, who was still sleeping peacefully against her chest. The small space of the sedan suddenly felt suffocating. I can explain," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please step out of the vehicle, Miss Carter." The officer's tone left no room for argument. With trembling hands, Lena opened the car door, carefully cradling Noah. The morning air was crisp and cold, making her shiver, or maybe it was fear that caused the tremors running through her body. From the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of Daniel arriving for his morning shift, his face tight with concern as he watched from a distance. "How long have you been living in your car, Miss Carter?" Margaret Wells pulled out a notepad, her pen poised to record every detail. It's temporary." Lena's voice cracked. "I just started a new job here. I'm cleaning in the evenings. I'll have enough for an apartment soon. Please, Noah is everything to me." The words tumbled out in a desperate rush. The CPS officer's eyes swept over the car's interior, the neatly folded blankets, the small collection of baby supplies, the empty formula bottles. "And the child's father?" "He's not in the picture," Lena whispered, bouncing Noah gently as he began to stir. "But I'm managing. I feed him regularly, keep him clean, take him to his checkups when I can afford them." "Miss Carter," Margaret interrupted, "living in a vehicle is not a suitable environment for an infant. There are serious concerns about temperature regulation, sanitation, and basic safety needs." She paused, writing something in her notepad. "Has Noah been receiving regular medical care?" Lena felt tears welling up in her eyes. "He had a fever recently, but it's better now. I've been giving him medicine, keeping him warm." "And where do you bathe him? How do you prepare his bottles? What's your plan for when winter comes?" Each question felt like a knife to Lena's heart. "The building has facilities," Lena explained desperately. "The staff here has been kind. I'm working hard to save money. Please, you can't take him. He's all I have." Her voice broke completely on the last words. Noah chose that moment to wake fully, his bright eyes blinking up at the stranger before him. He didn't cry, just watched curiously, one tiny hand clutching his mother's shirt. The CPS officer's expression softened slightly at the sight of their obvious bond. "Miss Carter, I understand you're trying." Margaret's voice gentled somewhat. "But my job is to ensure Noah's safety and well-being. Living in a car puts him at risk for numerous health and safety issues." "I'll do anything," Lena pleaded, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. Just please don't take my baby." Margaret Wells sighed, closing her notepad. "I'm issuing you a warning today. You have 2 weeks to secure suitable housing for yourself and Noah. If you cannot provide proof of stable living conditions by then, we will have to consider temporary placement while you get back on your feet. The words temporary placement hit Lena like a physical blow. She swayed slightly, holding Noah closer. 2 weeks? She whispered. But rent deposits alone. I suggest you look into emergency shelters or temporary housing programs. Margaret handed her a card with several numbers listed. These organizations may be able to help. But understand, miss. Carter, this is serious. We will be following up, and if conditions haven't improved significantly. She left the threat hanging in the air. After a few more questions and notes about Noah's current health and care routine, the CPS officer finally walked away, her heels clicking sharply on the concrete. Lena stood frozen for several moments, watching the woman disappear around the corner. Then, as if her legs could no longer support her, she collapsed back into the driver's seat. Noah, sensing his mother's distress, began to whimper softly. "Shh, baby. It's okay," she whispered. But her voice shook violently. "Mama's got you. I'm not letting anyone take you away." The tears came in earnest now, her body racking with silent sobs as she held her son close. Across the parking lot, Daniel stood in the shadows of his booth, his hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. His jaw worked silently as he watched Lena break down, knowing that all his small kindnesses weren't enough, not nearly enough, to save her from this new threat. The morning sun cast long shadows across the lot, and in them, Lena's hunched form seemed impossibly small and vulnerable as she wept in her car, clinging to her baby like he might disappear at any moment. The waiting room at the Free Hope Medical Clinic buzzed with quiet misery. Fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over the worn chairs and dated magazines. Lena sat in a corner, gently rocking Noah, who whimpered against her shoulder. His small body felt too warm, and each tiny cough sent daggers through her heart. She had counted the money in her wallet 3 times before coming here, exactly $47.33. It wouldn't be enough, she knew. But Noah's fever hadn't broken for days. The thought of waiting any longer made her stomach twist with worry. An elderly woman across from her smiled warmly, noticing how Lena's hands trembled as she filled out the intake forms. "First time here, dear?" Lena nodded, trying to keep her voice steady. "Yes. I hope they can help him. They're good people here," the woman assured her. "They'll take care of your little one." The clipboard felt heavy in Lena's hands as she approached the front desk. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair, took the forms with a gentle smile. "Noah Carter?" she confirmed, typing into her computer. "Yes," Lena whispered, shifting Noah to her other hip. I need to know how much this will cost. I can only afford." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly as she looked at her screen. "Oh, Miss Carter. It seems your visit has already been covered." Lena blinked, certain she had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Someone has already arranged payment for Noah's visit," the receptionist explained, turning the monitor slightly. "It shows here, an anonymous donation was made this morning to cover all costs." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Lena grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. "There must be some mistake. Nobody knew we were coming here." "No mistake," the receptionist assured her, pointing to the screen. "It's all properly documented. The donor requested anonymity, but specifically designated the funds for Noah Carter's care." Tears welled up in Lena's eyes, spilling over before she could stop them. Noah stirred, reaching up to pat her wet cheek with his tiny hand. The receptionist quietly passed her a tissue box. "Thank you," Lena managed, dabbing at her eyes. I've been so worried about him, and I didn't know how I was going to afford." "The doctor can see you now," a nurse called from the doorway, interrupting Lena's emotional moment. "Room 3, just down the hall." The examination room was small but clean, with cheerful animal drawings decorating the walls. The pediatrician, Dr. Chen, arrived quickly, a young woman with a bright smile who immediately put both Lena and Noah at ease. "Let's see what's bothering this little guy," she said, gently examining Noah. Her practiced hands checked his temperature, ears, and chest while she asked Lena questions about his symptoms. Noah remained surprisingly calm throughout the examination, only fussing slightly when the doctor listened to his lungs. "Good news, doctor," Chen announced finally. "It's a nasty cold, But his lungs are clear, no pneumonia. Relief flooded through Lena's body, making her legs weak. She sank into the chair beside the examination table. "I'm prescribing some medicine to help with the fever and congestion, doctor," Chen continued, writing on her pad. "Make sure he gets plenty of fluids and bring him back if his temperature spikes again or if you notice any difficulty breathing." "The medicine," Lena started hesitantly. The doctor smiled kindly. "That's covered too. The pharmacy downstairs has already been notified. They'll have everything ready for you in about 15 minutes. Fresh tears sprang to Lena's eyes. She hugged Noah close, breathing in his baby scent mixed with the lingering trace of fever. "I don't understand who would do this," she whispered. "Sometimes angels walk among us," Dr. Chen said softly, patting Lena's shoulder. "They just don't always wear wings." In the building's lobby, out of sight behind a large potted plant, Daniel watched Lena emerge from the elevator with Noah. The baby's head rested on her shoulder, but his eyes were brighter than they had been in days. Lena's face showed clear relief as she headed toward the pharmacy counter, hugging her son close. Daniel's hand was still warm from writing the check that morning. He had arrived at the clinic before it opened, speaking quietly with the administrator about arranging anonymous payment for any care the Carters might need. The amount he'd written was far more than today's visit would cost, enough to cover any medical needs for months to come. He waited until Lena had collected the medicine and left the building before stepping out from his hiding place. Walking toward the exit, he passed the same elderly woman from the waiting room. "That was a kind thing you did," she said quietly, making him pause. She smiled at his startled expression. "Don't worry. I saw you writing the check this morning. Your secret is safe with me." Daniel nodded gratefully and continued toward the door. The morning sun was bright outside, and somewhere in the city, a mother was taking her baby home with medicine and hope. It was enough. He slipped out of the clinic quietly, anonymous in his simple clothes, just another face in the crowd. Behind him, through the glass doors, he could hear the faint sound of a baby's happy gurgle, the best reward he could have asked for. Sarah, one of the older cleaning ladies who worked the evening shift with Lena, touched her arm gently as they finished their rounds. "You should come to our church dinner tonight, honey. Matthews always has plenty of food on Wednesdays." Lena hesitated, adjusting Noah on her hip. The baby had been doing better since the clinic visit, but his cheeks were still too pale. "I don't know. I'm not really dressed for church." "Oh, sweetheart." Sarah's weathered face creased into a warm smile. "God doesn't care what you're wearing. Besides, it's just the community dinner. Everyone comes as they are." The church stood 3 blocks from the office building, its red brick walls welcoming in the early evening light. Lena paused at the bottom of the steps, her work uniform feeling out of place against the stained glass windows. Noah babbled and reached toward the open doors, where the smell of home-cooked food wafted out. "Come on," Sarah encouraged, taking Lena's elbow. "Pastor Mike's wife makes the best meatloaf in the city." Inside, folding tables lined the basement hall, covered in checkered tablecloths. Steam rose from crockpots and casserole dishes. The room hummed with conversation and laughter, children darting between chairs while adults chatted over paper plates. "I feel like everyone's staring," Lena whispered, clutching Noah closer. "They're just wondering who gets to sit with the cutest baby in town," Sarah winked. She guided Lena to a table where 3 other women Saturday. "Ladies, this is Lena and little Noah. They work with me at Whitmore Tower." "Oh, what a precious boy." A plump woman with silver hair reached for Noah. "I'm Betty. Would you like to hold my grandson while you eat, dear? He's right over there playing with the blocks." Lena's arms tightened instinctively around Noah, but his eyes had already locked onto the play area where several toddlers stacked colorful wooden blocks. He squirmed, reaching toward them. "It's okay," Betty said softly, recognizing the fear in Lena's eyes. "We can all see him from here." Sometimes mamas need both hands to eat. Slowly, Lena nodded. Betty's grandson, a chubby 4-year-old with kind eyes like his grandmother, took Noah's hand. "I'll show him the good blocks," he announced importantly. Sarah returned with 2 loaded plates. "Pastor Mike's wife outdid herself tonight. Try the green bean casserole. It's heaven in a dish." The food smelled incredible. Lena couldn't remember the last time she'd had a proper home-cooked meal. She kept one eye on Noah as she took small bites, watching him pat the blocks and giggle when they tumbled down. "First time here?" asked the woman across the table. She wore scrubs with little cartoon animals on them. "I'm Rachel. I work nights at the children's hospital." Lena nodded, swallowing carefully. Yes, Sarah invited me. Well, you picked a good night. Betty always brings her famous apple pie on Wednesdays. Rachel leaned in conspiratorially. Some of us come just for that, though we'd never tell Pastor Mike. A laugh bubbled up before Lena could stop it. The women's easy conversation flowed around her, including her naturally without pressure. They talked about their jobs, their children, the unseasonably cold weather. Nobody asked why she was there or where she lived. Nobody looked at her worn uniform with judgment. When Noah started fussing, Betty's grandson carefully led him back to their table. He's hungry, the boy announced. Grandma, can we get him some of the soft stuff? Betty was already heading to the serving table, returning with a small bowl of mashed potatoes. May I? She asked Lena, holding up a plastic spoon. Lena watched in amazement as Noah eagerly accepted bites from Betty, who had clearly fed many babies in her time. The other women continued their conversation, occasionally making silly faces at Noah that sent him into fits of giggles. There's usually extra food to take home, Sarah mentioned casually as they finished eating. They pack it up in containers for anyone who wants it. Saves it from going to waste. Lena felt tears prick at her eyes. These women barely knew her, yet they offered such kindness without hesitation. Noah was currently perched on Rachel's lap, fascinated by her animated retelling of The Three Little Pigs. I'll be right back, she whispered, slipping away to the restroom. In the quiet, she leaned against the sink, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't quite name. Through the small window, she could see the church's garden, where someone had planted late-blooming flowers that refused to give in to the approaching winter. When she returned, Noah had migrated to Betty's lap, where he was falling asleep to her gentle humming. The other children played nearby, their energy finally winding down as parents began gathering coats and containers of leftovers. Here, sweetie. Sarah pressed 2 full containers into her hands. Meatloaf keeps well, and there's plenty of vegetables too. You'll both sleep better with full stomachs. Lena gathered Noah, who barely stirred as she settled him against her shoulder. The women hugged her goodbye as if she'd known them for years instead of hours. Same time next week? Betty asked, touching Noah's cheek softly. I'll bring extra pie. In the quiet of the sanctuary, Lena paused. Moonlight filtered through the stained glass, painting rainbow patterns on the wooden pews. Noah's warm weight against her chest felt like an anchor in a storm she'd been weathering alone for too long. She slid into a pew, careful not to wake him. The silence wrapped around her like a blanket, peaceful rather than lonely for the first time in months. Bowing her head, she whispered into the quiet, Maybe we'll be okay. In the shadows at the back of the church, Daniel stood motionless, watching. He'd followed at a distance when he saw Sarah leading Lena toward Street Matthews, wanting to ensure they arrived safely. Now, seeing her surrounded by genuine care and community, something tight in his chest began to loosen. He remained in the darkness as Lena gathered her things and slipped out into the night, Noah still sleeping peacefully against her shoulder. The night air had grown crisp as Lena pushed her cleaning cart down the empty hallway. Her shoulders ached from scrubbing floors, but at least Noah was sleeping peacefully in the break room, watched over by kind-hearted Sarah. The job wasn't glamorous, but it meant food on the table and a warm place for Noah during her shifts. Through the window, she spotted Daniel sitting alone on a bench in the parking lot, his figure illuminated by the yellow glow of the streetlights. He seemed lost in thought, staring up at the stars. Lena hesitated for a moment, then made her way outside. Mind if I join you? She asked softly. Daniel looked up, a gentle smile crossing his weathered face. Please. He scooted over, making room on the bench. Lena sat down, wrapping her thin jacket tighter around herself. Sarah's watching Noah. He's actually sleeping through the night now, thanks to that medicine from the clinic. That's wonderful news, Daniel said, his voice warm with genuine care. How are you holding up? Lena sighed, looking up at the same stars he'd been studying. Some days are harder than others. But you know what? That church you told me about, they've been so kind. I never thought I'd find people who'd accept us without judgment. Daniel nodded, his eyes reflecting the streetlight. Faith has a way of showing up when we need it most. Do you believe in God? Lena asked, surprising herself with her directness. A shadow passed over Daniel's face. I did, once. Then I lost my wife, Sarah, 3 years ago. He paused, swallowing hard. Cancer. After that, I questioned everything. I'm so sorry, Lena whispered. For a long time, I was angry, bitter, had everything money could buy, but it couldn't save her. He caught himself quickly, adding, I mean, we had enough for treatments, but Lena didn't notice his slip. That must have been so hard. When Noah's father left us, I felt abandoned by everyone, even God. But somehow, these past few weeks, she glanced at Daniel. It's like someone's watching over us. Daniel turned to face her. What do you dream about, Lena? Beyond just surviving? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked about her dreams in a long time. She took a deep breath. I used to want to be a teacher. Before everything fell apart. I love working with children, seeing their faces light up when they learn something new. That's beautiful, Daniel said softly. Why not pursue it? Lena laughed, but there was no joy in it. With what money? Besides, who'd hire a homeless single mom? You're not defined by your circumstances, Daniel said firmly. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met. The way you care for Noah, how hard you work, that shows character. Tears pricked at Lena's eyes. Sometimes I feel so lost, like I'm failing him. Hey, Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. Look at me. You're not failing. You're fighting, and that matters more than you know. A cool breeze rustled through the trees, and Lena shivered. Daniel removed his jacket and offered it to her. Oh, no, I couldn't, she protested. Please. Sarah would have never forgiven me for letting someone stay cold. His smile was sad but warm. Lena accepted the jacket, wrapping it around her shoulders. It smelled of coffee and something expensive she couldn't quite place. Tell me about her, your Sarah. Daniel's eyes grew distant. She had the biggest heart, always saw the best in people. Even at the end, she made me promise to keep loving, keep helping others. He cleared his throat. That's why I like this job. Down here in the parking lot, I can see people, really see them. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their thoughts. A car horn honked in the distance, and Lena jumped slightly. I should check on Noah, she said, standing reluctantly. Of course. Daniel stood too. Lena, whatever you're facing, you don't have to face it alone. She nodded, fighting back tears. Thank you for everything. As she walked back inside, Daniel called out softly, Don't give up on those dreams, or on faith. Later that night, as Lena drove home with a sleeping Noah in the back seat, she found herself talking quietly to her son. That guard, he's different, like an angel watching over us. Noah's only response was a peaceful sigh in his sleep, but Lena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The autumn days slipped by like leaves falling from trees, each one bringing small but noticeable changes. Lena's shoulders no longer slumped with quite the same weight of despair as she moved through her evening cleaning routine. Her cart rolled smoothly down the quiet hallways, and she'd learned all the shortcuts between floors that made her work more efficient. Noah's cheeks had filled out, gaining a healthy pink glow that made Lena's heart sing. The regular meals from the cafeteria and the medicine from the clinic had worked wonders. He was hitting all his milestones now, babbling more, reaching for toys, and flashing heart-melting smiles at everyone who passed by. You're doing great with these floors, Lena, Mrs. Martinez, her supervisor, said one evening as she inspected the lobby. I can see my reflection in them. She made a note on her clipboard, nodding approvingly. Keep this up, and we might have something more permanent for you soon. Lena's chest swelled with pride. Thank you, ma'am. I really appreciate the opportunity. Her fellow cleaners had taken her under their wing, showing her tricks to make the work easier and sharing stories during breaks. Rosa, who'd been there 15 years, always saved a portion of her homemade tamales for Lena and Noah. Tom, the elderly night watchman, would sing silly songs to Noah while Lena cleaned nearby offices. The building had become more than just a workplace. It felt almost like home. During her breaks, she'd often find Daniel in the parking lot, and they'd share quiet conversations under the stars. He never pushed or pried, just listened with genuine interest as she gradually opened up about her life. My mama always said faith is like a mustard seed, she told him one night, while Noah slept peacefully in his carrier nearby. Tiny at first, but it grows into something strong. Daniel's eyes had softened in the dim light. "Your mother sounds wise," he'd replied softly. "Sometimes the smallest things make the biggest difference." She noticed how he always seemed to appear when she needed help most. Carrying heavy garbage bags, fixing a squeaky wheel on her cart, or watching Noah for a few minutes while she tackled a tough cleaning job. His kindness came without expectation or judgment. And slowly, Lena found herself trusting him more. The church community had embraced them too. Every Sunday, Noah got passed around like a precious treasure while Lena joined the choir. Her voice, rusty from disuse, grew stronger each week. The pastor's wife, Mrs. Thompson, always made sure they had extra portions from the weekly potluck to take home. "God works in mysterious ways," Mrs. Thompson would say, pressing containers of food into Lena's hands. "Sometimes he sends angels in disguise to help us through hard times." One evening, as Lena wiped down the executive floor windows, she caught her reflection and barely recognized herself. Her face had lost that haunted look of desperation. Her uniform was clean and pressed, her hair neatly braided. She looked capable. Strong. The cleaning supervisor had started giving her more responsibilities, training new staff, organizing the supply closet, even handling some special requests from the executives. Each small success built her confidence a little more. "You're one of our best workers," Mrs. Martinez told her during a performance review. "The attention to detail, the consistency. That's what we need around here." Noah was thriving too. The staff lounge had become his second nursery, with toys donated by coworkers scattered in one corner. The security guards would take turns checking on him during their rounds, and the cafeteria ladies always saved his favorite mashed fruits. Even the CPS officer who'd frightened her so badly seemed satisfied during follow-up visits. "I can see you're making positive changes," she'd noted, watching Noah play happily on a clean blanket. "Keep up the good work." Through it all, Daniel remained a steady presence, though Lena noticed something odd about him sometimes. A hesitation in his voice, a shadow crossing his face when certain topics came up. But his kindness never wavered, and that meant everything to her. Late one night, after finishing her shift, Lena carefully arranged Noah's blanket bed in the staff lounge. The room was warm and safe, with soft light from the hallway creating a gentle glow. Noah's eyelids were already drooping as she changed him into clean pajamas. "You're such a good boy," she whispered, smoothing his dark curls. "Mama loves you so much." She tucked his favorite teddy bear, a gift from the church nursery, beside him and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. Unknown to her, Daniel had been working late in his private office upstairs. As he headed toward the elevator, his steps carried him past the staff lounge. He paused outside the door, watching the tender scene through the gap. The sight of Lena caring for Noah with such gentle love stirred something deep in his heart. His hand tightened on his briefcase as conflicting emotions washed over him. Warmth at their growing stability, guilt over his deception, and a longing to do more, to be more than just the helpful parking guard. He stood there, frozen between two worlds. The one where he was a billionaire CEO with unlimited resources, and this simpler one where his small acts of kindness meant everything to a struggling mother and her baby. The weight of his secret pressed heavily on his shoulders as he watched Lena tuck the blanket securely around her sleeping child. Lena hummed softly as she pushed her cleaning cart down the carpeted hallway of the executive floor. It was nearly 10 o'clock, and most offices were dark and empty. The building felt different at night, peaceful, almost. She'd grown to appreciate these quiet hours, even finding comfort in the gentle whir of the vacuum and the lemon scent of cleaning supplies. Tonight, she worked with extra care. Noah was sleeping soundly in the staff lounge downstairs, watched over by Maria, another cleaning lady who had become like a grandmother to him. The thought made Lena smile. After months of struggling alone, it felt strange but wonderful to have people she could trust. As she approached the corner conference room, voices drifted through the partially open door. Lena slowed her steps, not wanting to disturb what seemed to be a late meeting. She reached for her cart to turn it around when a familiar name caught her attention. "Daniel Whitmore is a genius," a deep voice declared. "Who would have thought the CEO would spend months walking among us like a common security guard?" Lena's hand froze on the cart handle. The cleaning spray she'd been holding clattered to the floor. "It's brilliant market research," another voice agreed. "Getting to know the building operations from the ground up. Though I heard it started after his wife passed something about finding purpose beyond the boardroom. Well, whatever his reasons, it's working. Employee satisfaction is up. And that new program he implemented for struggling single parents? Revolutionary. The voices continued, but Lena couldn't hear them over the rushing in her ears. Daniel, the kind parking guard who'd brought her tea on that first desperate night, who'd found her a job, made sure Noah got medicine, appeared with help just when they needed it most. He wasn't a guard at all. He was Daniel Whitmore, the billionaire, the owner of this entire building, the man whose company's policies had contributed to her eviction in the first place. Memories flashed through her mind in cruel new light. His careful questions about her situation, the mysterious, anonymous donations, the way problems seemed to solve themselves after she'd mentioned them to him. She'd thought it was God answering her prayers, but it had been him all along, playing at being her savior while hiding behind a lie. Her chest tightened, as if all the air had been squeezed from her lungs. The fluorescent light suddenly seemed harsh, exposing her naivety for all to see. How many times had she confided in him, shared her fears and hopes, let him see her at her lowest moments? The cleaning cart rattled as her hands began to shake. She'd even told Noah that Daniel was like their guardian angel. The thought made her cheeks burn with shame. All this time, she'd been nothing but an experiment to him, a charity case he could study up close, probably laughing at her behind her back. Voices from the conference room grew louder, approaching the door. Lena stumbled backward, nearly tripping over her cart. She had to get out, had to get Noah, had to escape this tower of lies before the humiliation crushed her completely. She abandoned the cart where it stood and ran for the elevator, jabbing the button repeatedly with trembling fingers. When the doors finally opened, she practically fell inside, pressing herself against the back wall as if she could disappear into it. The descent felt endless. Each floor that ticked by reminded her of another moment she'd spent cleaning these halls, feeling grateful for the opportunity, thinking she was slowly building a better life. But it had all been orchestrated by him. Every bit of progress, every small victory, none of it was really hers. When the elevator reached the ground floor, Lena ran to the staff lounge. Maria looked up in surprise as she burst through the door. "Lena, what's wrong, honey? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have to go," Lena managed, gathering Noah's blanket and diaper bag with shaking hands. "I'm sorry. I can't. I have to leave." Maria stood, concern etched on her kind face. "But your shift isn't over. Is everything okay?" "No," Lena whispered, lifting a sleeping Noah into her arms. "Nothing is okay." She hurried through the lobby, past the security desk where she'd seen Daniel so many times. Had he been enjoying himself, playing the role of the humble guard? How many times had he watched her struggle, knowing he could end it all with a snap of his fingers? The night air hit her face like a slap as she pushed through the revolving doors. Her old sedan sat in its usual spot, the same spot where she'd first met him, where she'd thought God had sent help in her darkest hour. Tears blurred her vision as she secured Noah in his car seat. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake, innocent to the way their world had just shattered. Lena slid behind the wheel, her whole body trembling now, with a mixture of rage and humiliation. The engine sputtered to life, and she threw the car into reverse, tires squealing slightly on the smooth concrete. As she sped toward the exit, she caught a glimpse of the parking booth in her rearview mirror. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing there, watching her go. But she didn't slow down to check. She couldn't bear to see Daniel now. Couldn't bear to see the truth of who he really was. The lies he'd told. The game he'd played with her life and her trust. Lena pressed the gas pedal harder, wanting only to put as much distance as possible between herself and the towering building that now felt like a monument to her own foolishness. She'd rather sleep in her car again, rather face CPS, rather struggle alone than be part of someone's twisted social experiment. The building disappeared behind her as she turned onto the main street, but the weight of betrayal stayed heavy in her chest. Every kind word, every gentle gesture, every moment of hope she'd felt, all of it had been built on lies. Noah sighed in his sleep, and Lena gripped the steering wheel tighter, fighting back sobs. She had no idea where she was going or what she would do next, but she knew one thing for certain. She would never set foot in that building again. The morning sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Lena pulled into her usual spot. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, her eyes red from a sleepless night. Every act of kindness, every gentle word from Daniel now felt like a knife in her heart. Noah stirred in his car seat, oblivious to his mother's turmoil. "Stay quiet for Mommy, sweetie," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She spotted Daniel in his familiar Navy uniform, doing his morning rounds. The sight of him, the lie of him, made her stomach churn. Lena stepped out of the car, leaving Noah safely buckled in. Her footsteps echoed against the concrete as she marched toward Daniel. He turned at the sound, his face lighting up with that same gentle smile she'd grown to trust. The smile faltered as he saw her expression. "Lena, is everything—" "Stop!" She cut him off, her voice sharp enough to make him step back. "Just stop pretending." Daniel's face paled. "What do you mean? I know who you are." Lena's hands balled into fists at her sides. "You're not some parking guard. You're Daniel Whitmore, the owner of this whole building, of the whole company." The silence between them felt heavy, oppressive. Daniel's shoulders sagged, the carefully maintained facade crumbling. "Lena, please let me explain." "Explain what?" Her voice cracked. "How you've been playing dress-up, slumming it with the poor people? Getting some kind of twisted satisfaction from watching us struggle? No, that's not. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" Tears spilled down her cheeks now, but she didn't bother wiping them away. "I told you things, personal things. I let you help Noah, I thought." She shook her head, disgusted with herself. "I thought you were just a kind person who understood what it was like to struggle." Daniel took a step forward, his hands raised in a pleading gesture. "I am that person, Lena. The money doesn't change who I am inside, doesn't it?" She laughed bitterly. "You could have helped us properly from the start. Instead, you played games, pretending to be something you're not. Was it fun? Watching me scrape by? Watching me clean your building while you pretended to be just another worker?" "I never meant to hurt you," Daniel said softly. "I started wearing this uniform because I needed to understand, to really see how people lived. Then I met you and Noah, and I—" He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. "I was afraid if you knew the truth, everything would change. Well, congratulations, it has." Lena's voice was ice cold now. "You know what the worst part is? I actually prayed for you. Thanked God for sending us a guardian angel in the form of a humble parking guard." She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold herself together. "What a joke." "The help I gave you was real," Daniel insisted. "Every conversation, every moment, it was all real." "Real?" Lena's voice rose. "Real as living in your car because you can't afford rent. Real as choosing between medicine for your baby and food for the week. Real as being terrified that CPS will take your child because you can't provide a proper home." She jabbed a finger at his chest. "You don't know anything about real!" Noah's cry pierced the air, making both of them turn toward the car. The sound seemed to drain the last of Lena's anger, leaving only exhaustion and hurt in its wake. "I trusted you," she whispered. "I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, God had sent someone who truly cared, not because of pity or guilt, but because they saw us as people worth caring about." Daniel's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I do care, Lena. More than you know. Save it for someone who still believes your lies." She turned away, her steps heavy. "I quit, by the way. You can find someone else to clean your offices and be your charity case." "Please," Daniel called after her. "Let me make this right." Lena paused at her car door, not looking back. "You can't make right something that was wrong from the start." She got into the car, where Noah's cries had turned to whimpers. As she buckled herself in, she caught a glimpse of Daniel in her rearview mirror. He stood alone in the lot, his borrowed uniform suddenly looking like the costume it was, his face a mask of devastation. Lena pulled out of the parking lot, her vision blurring with fresh tears as Noah's cries grew louder in the back seat. She drove away from the building, away from the man she thought she knew, away from another broken piece of her already fragmented hope. Daniel remained rooted to the spot long after her car disappeared from view. The morning sun continued its climb, casting his shadow long and dark across the empty parking lot. He stood there, a billionaire in a guard's uniform, surrounded by all his wealth and power, yet feeling more lost and alone than he had in years. The old sedan sputtered and coughed, thick white smoke billowing from under the hood. Lena's heart dropped as she guided the dying car to the side of the busy street. Noah whimpered in his car seat, picking up on his mother's distress. "No, no, please," Lena begged, turning the key again and again. The engine made a horrible grinding sound but wouldn't start. She glanced at her phone. 7:45 a.m. Her shift started in 15 minutes. She tried calling her supervisor, but the line went straight to voicemail. "This is Lena Carter. My car broke down, and I'm trying to find a way in. Please call me back." Her voice cracked as she ended the call. Noah started to fuss, his little face scrunching up. Lena climbed into the back seat, unbuckling him and pulling him close. "Baby, it's okay. Mommy's here." But the tears welling in her eyes told a different story. The morning traffic rushed past them, each car a reminder of how stuck they were. Lena checked her wallet, $12 and some change. Not enough for a taxi, definitely not enough for a mechanic. The bus would take over an hour with transfers, and she couldn't afford to be that late. Her phone buzzed a text from her supervisor. "Third absence this month. Final warning." Lena's hands shook as she read the message. The job she'd fought so hard to get was slipping away. She thought of Daniel, who'd helped her secure this position, and fresh anger mixed with her despair. Had it all been some twisted game to him, playing savior to the poor single mother? The morning grew warmer, and Noah became restless in the stuffy car. Lena managed to push the vehicle into a nearby parking lot, but that small effort left her exhausted and sweating. She gave Noah his sippy cup with the last of their water and tried to think. Her phone buzzed again. Her heart stopped when she saw who it was, CPS. "Miss Carter?" The social worker's voice was professionally neutral. "We've received notice that you missed another shift. Given your current situation and our previous discussions about stable employment." Lena clutched Noah tighter as she listened. Words like evaluation and temporary custody stabbed at her heart. "I have a job," she protested, her voice trembling. "My car just broke down. I'm trying." "We understand you're trying, Miss Carter, but trying isn't enough when a child's welfare is concerned. We'll need to schedule another home visit tomorrow morning." The call ended, leaving Lena in horrible silence. Noah squirmed in her arms, reaching for his worn teddy bear. She handed it to him mechanically, her mind spinning with terror. They couldn't take Noah. They couldn't. He was everything, her reason to wake up, to fight, to breathe. Without him, the thought was too much. Lena broke down, silent sobs racking her body as she held her baby boy. Noah patted her wet cheeks with his tiny hands, confused by his mother's tears. "Mama sad?" he asked in his sweet baby voice. "No, baby," she managed, trying to smile through her tears. "Mama's just tired." She wiped her eyes and kissed his forehead, breathing in his familiar baby scent. The hours crawled by. Lena tried everyone she knew, co-workers, church members, even the mechanic who'd helped her before. No one answered or could help. The few who responded couldn't spare the money for repairs. As evening approached, dark clouds gathered overhead. The first fat raindrops hit the windshield, and Noah whimpered at the thunder. Lena wrapped him in his blanket, making a game of counting the seconds between lightning and thunder to distract him. "See? The storm's moving away," she told him, though her own heart jumped at each thunderclap. The rain matched her mood, heavy and relentless. They shared a package of crackers from her bag, their last food. Noah fell asleep eventually, his sweet face peaceful despite their circumstances. Lena watched him breathe, memorizing every detail of his face, his dark eyelashes against his cheeks, the way his lips moved slightly in his sleep, the tiny dimple that appeared when he smiled. How could anyone think she wasn't taking good care of him? She'd give her life for this child. Night settled in, bringing a bone-deep chill despite the late spring weather. Lena pulled Noah closer, spreading her thin jacket over them both. The parking lot lights cast weird shadows through the rain-streaked windows, and every passing car made her tense. In the quiet darkness, with only Noah's soft breathing as company, Lena's walls finally crumbled completely. She looked up through the car's roof, tears streaming down her face. "God," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "If you're listening, please don't let them take my baby." The grand lobby of Whitmore Tower buzzed with activity as reporters and news crews rushed to set up their equipment. The hastily called press conference had drawn media from across the city, all wondering what could be so urgent that Daniel Whitmore, the usually private billionaire, would demand their immediate attention. Daniel stood behind the podium, his customary expensive suit replaced by a simple white shirt and dark slacks, much like what he wore as a parking guard. His face showed the strain of sleepless nights, but his eyes held fierce determination. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, his voice steady but humbled. "I've gathered you here today because I need to announce immediate and sweeping changes across all Whitmore housing properties." The reporters leaned forward, pens poised. Camera lights flashed as Daniel unfolded a single sheet of paper. "Effective immediately, we are implementing a comprehensive affordable housing program across all Whitmore properties. 25% of all units will be designated for low-income families, with rent capped at no more than 30% of their monthly income." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A reporter's hand shot up, but Daniel continued. "Additionally, we are launching a debt relief program for current tenants struggling with back rent. Those facing eviction will have their cases reviewed immediately, with options for payment plans or, in cases of severe hardship, debt forgiveness." He paused, his fingers gripping the podium's edges. "But perhaps most importantly, we're introducing new tenant protection policies. No more automated evictions. No more refusing applications based on credit scores alone. Every case will be reviewed individually, because behind every application, every late payment, there's a human story." Daniel's voice softened, and he set aside his prepared remarks. "I learned this lesson recently, in a way that changed me forever. You see, for the past few months, I've been working as a parking guard in one of my own buildings." The room erupted in surprised whispers and hurried typing on phones. Daniel waited for the noise to settle. "During those nights, I met a young mother and her baby. They had lost everything, their home, their stability, nearly their hope. But this mother," his voice caught slightly, "she showed me what true dignity looks like. Despite sleeping in her car, despite struggling to feed her sick child, she never stopped fighting, never stopped working, never lost her faith." The room had grown completely silent. Every camera focused on Daniel's face as he continued. "This mother taught me something profound about courage. While I sat in my penthouse office making decisions that affected thousands of lives, she showed me what those decisions really meant. One missed paycheck, one medical bill, one stroke of bad luck, that's all it takes to push a hard-working family into crisis." He straightened his shoulders, his voice growing stronger. "I've spent years building wealth, acquiring properties, expanding my empire, but I forgot the most basic truth. These aren't just buildings we're managing, they're homes. They're sanctuaries for families. They're the difference between stability and chaos, between hope and despair." Daniel pulled out another document. "So today, I'm not just announcing policy changes. I'm establishing the New Hope Housing Initiative, with an initial investment of $50 million. This foundation will focus on creating affordable housing solutions, providing emergency assistance to families facing eviction, and offering job training programs for struggling parents." In a small break room, several floors above, a group of cleaning staff huddled around Maria's phone, watching the live stream. Lena stood at the back, her hands trembling as she listened. "This mother and her child opened my eyes," Daniel continued on the small screen. "They showed me that true worth isn't measured in dollar signs, but in the courage to keep going when everything seems hopeless. They taught me that real strength isn't about power, it's about using whatever resources you have to lift others up." Tears welled in Lena's eyes as she recognized her own story, told not with pity or condescension, but with profound respect. Her co-workers glanced at her, beginning to understand. "Some might call these changes radical," Daniel was saying. "Some might say they're bad business, but I say we've been doing business wrong all along. We've forgotten that our greatest asset isn't our real estate portfolio, it's the trust of the families who make their homes with us." He looked directly into the cameras, and even through the small phone screen, his sincerity was unmistakable. "To that mother, if you're watching this, you thought I was helping you. But the truth is, you helped me. You showed me what really matters. You reminded me that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness." Maria reached back and squeezed Lena's hand as Daniel concluded his speech. "The changes I'm announcing today are just the beginning. Starting now, Whitmore Properties will measure its success not by profits, but by the number of families we help keep together, the number of children who go to sleep feeling safe, the number of parents who don't have to choose between medicine and rent. The reporters erupted with questions, but Daniel held up his hand for one final statement. Sometimes it takes seeing the world through different eyes to understand what really matters. I needed to step down from my tower to see the truth on the ground. And what I saw was both heartbreaking and inspiring. People like this mother, who taught me that true wealth isn't what you have, but what you give. In the break room, Lena pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed by emotion. Her story, their simple interactions in the parking lot, had sparked something much bigger than herself. Through her struggle, through her determination to keep Noah safe, she had unknowingly touched the heart of someone with the power to help countless other families facing the same battles. Maria turned to her, eyes shining. "Lena, he's talking about you, isn't he?" Lena could only nod, watching as Daniel fielded questions from reporters, his face set with unwavering determination. On the screen, he wasn't the humble parking guard who had brought her tea and blankets, nor was he the distant billionaire she had felt betrayed by. He was something else entirely, a man transformed by compassion, using his position to create real change. For the first time since discovering his true identity, Lena felt her anger and hurt begin to fade, replaced by understanding. Perhaps his disguise hadn't been about deceiving her after all. Perhaps it had been about seeing the truth, and now he was doing something about it. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the parking lot as Lena sat in her car, clutching Noah to her chest. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she watched the CPS officer approach, manila folder in hand. The click of the woman's heels on the pavement sounded like a countdown to disaster. "Miss Carter," the officer said, her voice professionally detached. "I'm afraid we need to discuss Noah's situation." She adjusted her wire-rimmed glasses, flipping through the papers. "Our records show you're still without permanent residence." Lena held Noah tighter, breathing in his baby powder scent. He squirmed in her arms, reaching for his worn teddy bear on the passenger seat. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm working. I'm trying so hard." The officer's expression softened slightly, but her words remained firm. "I understand you're doing your best, but living in a car isn't acceptable for an infant. You have 72 hours to secure stable housing, or we'll have to place Noah in temporary foster care." The world seemed to tilt beneath Lena's feet. 72 hours. 3 days to accomplish what she hadn't managed in months. Her vision blurred with tears as she nodded mechanically at the officer's continued explanation of procedures and requirements. Noah patted her cheek with his tiny hand, babbling softly. The simple gesture broke something inside her. As soon as the officer walked away, Lena's composure crumbled completely. She slumped against the steering wheel, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I'm so sorry, baby," she whispered to Noah, who watched her with worried eyes. "Mommy tried. I tried so hard." The weight of her failure crushed her chest, making it hard to breathe. Everything she'd fought for, every extra shift, every careful penny saved, none of it had been enough. The afternoon grew darker as storm clouds gathered overhead. A few drops of rain hit the windshield, matching the tears that rolled down Lena's cheeks. Noah started to fuss, picking up on her distress. "Shh, it's okay," she murmured, though nothing felt okay anymore. The church community had been kind, but they couldn't offer housing. Her co-workers barely made ends meet themselves, and Daniel. The thought of him sent a fresh wave of pain through her heart. She'd trusted him, believed in his kindness, only to discover it was all part of some billionaire's game of playing savior. The memory of their conversations, which had once brought her comfort, now felt tainted. Thunder rumbled overhead as the rain intensified. Lena fumbled through her purse, counting the meager bills inside for the 100th time. Not enough for a deposit anywhere, barely enough for another tank of gas. Noah began to cry in earnest now, hungry and uncomfortable in the humid car. "Just a little longer, sweetheart," she said, trying to keep her voice steady as she prepared his bottle. Her hands shook so badly she nearly spilled the formula. The reality of losing him was becoming unbearably clear. In 3 days, these simple moments, feeding him, holding him, hearing his little giggles, could be taken from her. A sharp knock on her window made her jump. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw a familiar figure standing there, completely soaked. Daniel. For a moment, She considered starting the car and driving away, but exhaustion and desperation won out. She rolled down the window slightly. "Lena," Daniel said, rain dripping from his now disheveled suit. Gone was the careful disguise of the parking guard. He stood before her as himself, yet somehow more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. "I heard about the CPS visit. Come to watch the final act of your charity case." The words came out bitter, but they lacked real fire. She was too tired for anger anymore. "No," he said quietly. "I came because I care about you and Noah. Not as a billionaire, not as your boss, just as someone who's watched you fight harder than anyone I've ever known." Noah cooed at the sound of Daniel's voice, reaching toward the window. Despite herself, Lena felt tears welling up again. "I don't need your pity," she managed to say, though her voice wavered. "This isn't pity, Lena." Daniel moved closer, rain still pouring around him. "When I lost my wife, I thought money could fill the emptiness. I surrounded myself with wealth and power, but I was more alone than ever. Then I started walking these streets as a guard, and I saw real courage in you." Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the sincerity in his eyes. "You showed me what true strength looks like, fighting every day, keeping faith, putting Noah first no matter what. You made me want to be better, to do better." Lena's grip on Noah loosened slightly as she listened. The baby had stopped crying, watching Daniel with curious eyes. "I know I deceived you about who I was," Daniel continued, "and I'm sorry. But everything else, every conversation, every moment we shared, that was real, and I'm not going to stand by and watch them take Noah from you." He placed his hand on the car window, his expression resolute. "Let me help you, Lena, not as a billionaire throwing money at a problem, but as someone who cares about you both, someone who wants to stand beside you and fight." The rain continued to fall, but neither of them moved. Noah reached out again, pressing his tiny palm against the window where Daniel's hand rested. Lena looked at her son, then at the man who had been their guardian angel in disguise, and felt something shift in her heart. Daniel's next words came soft but firm through the rain. "You don't have to face this alone anymore, I promise you that. I understand you're doing your best," the officer continued. "But good intentions aren't enough. Without stable housing within the next 72 hours, we'll have no choice but to place Noah in temporary foster care." Lena's world spun. Her arms tightened around Noah, who sensed her distress and began to whimper. The parking lot blurred through her tears, the towering office building seeming to mock her efforts to stay afloat. "Wait!" A deep voice called out from across the lot. Daniel strode toward them, no longer in his guard uniform but wearing a well-tailored suit. His face was etched with determination, though his eyes held the same gentleness Lena had come to know during their late-night conversations. The CPS officer turned, recognition flickering across her face. "Mr. Whitmore?" "I'd like to speak on Miss Carter's behalf," Daniel said, standing beside Lena's car. He glanced at her, his expression asking permission. After a moment's hesitation, Lena gave a small nod. "Miss Carter has approved housing waiting for her," Daniel continued. "A 2-bedroom apartment in the Cedar Grove complex. It's been reserved and furnished, ready for immediate occupancy." He pulled out his phone, showing the officer documents. "The lease is guaranteed for 2 years. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Cedar Grove was one of the nicest affordable housing communities in the city, the kind of place she'd dreamed of raising Noah. The officer reviewed the documentation, her professional mask cracking slightly. "This island? Unexpected. But housing alone doesn't—" "I'm also personally vouching for Miss Carter's character," Daniel interrupted. "I've watched her work 2 jobs, care for her son through illness, and never once give up. She's not just surviving, she's fighting for a better life." His voice grew softer. "I know what it's like to lose family, to feel alone. But Lena deserves a chance to keep hers together." Noah reached out toward Daniel, babbling happily. Despite herself, Lena felt tears sliding down her cheeks, not from fear this time, but from something else she couldn't name. The officer looked between them, then consulted her papers again. "There will need to be a formal hearing," she said slowly. "But with stable housing secured, we can arrange a temporary stay of removal pending court review." Relief flooded through Lena's body, making her dizzy. Noah snuggled against her chest, playing with her necklace, blissfully unaware of how close they'd come to separation. "Thank you," she managed to whisper. After the officer left, an awkward silence fell between Lena and Daniel. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking more vulnerable in his expensive suit than he ever had in his guard's uniform. "Why?" Lena finally asked. "After how I treated you." "Because you were right," Daniel said quietly. "I was hiding behind a disguise, playing at understanding poverty, while still having my mansion to go home to." He met her eyes. "But getting to know you and Noah, it wasn't a game. You showed me what real strength looks like. What it means to love someone so much you'd sacrifice everything." Lena looked down at Noah, who had fallen asleep against her shoulder. "I didn't want charity," she murmured. "This isn't charity," Daniel replied. "It's justice. The apartment? It's part of the new affordable housing initiative I announced. You'll pay what you can afford, just like any other resident." He paused. "I'm not trying to be your savior, Lena. I'm just trying to fix what's broken in my own way." 3 days later, they sat in a courthouse waiting room. Noah played with blocks in the corner while Lena's hands twisted nervously in her lap. Daniel sat beside her, respectfully distant, but present. "The judge is ready," the clerk announced. Inside the courtroom, Lena stood straight and tall. Noah balanced on her hip. She answered the judge's questions clearly, describing her new job, the apartment, her plans for Noah's future. Daniel testified about her character and the support systems in place through his company's community programs. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes, reviewed the documents carefully. "Miss Carter," she said finally, "this court has seen countless cases of parents who promise to do better, but few show the dedication you've demonstrated." She smiled. "With the stable housing secured and Mr. Whitmore's advocacy, along with your evident commitment to your child's welfare, I see no reason to separate this family." Case dismissed. Lena's knees went weak with relief. Noah squealed and clapped, not understanding but feeding off his mother's joy. She hugged him close, pressing kisses to his curly hair. "Thank you," she whispered, looking not at the judge, but at Daniel. She saw answering tears in his eyes as he nodded, understanding passing between them. They weren't just a billionaire and a struggling mother anymore. They were two broken people who had somehow helped each other become whole again. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the small apartment complex. As Lena stood at the entrance, Noah balanced on her hip. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned the key in the lock for the first time. The door swung open to reveal a cozy living room, already furnished with a comfortable-looking sofa and a sturdy coffee table. "Welcome home," Daniel said softly behind her, carrying a box labeled kitchen items in Lena's neat handwriting. Lena stepped inside, her breath catching. The walls were painted a warm cream color, and soft curtains filtered the morning light. A small dining table with 4 chairs sat in the corner, and she could see the kitchen beyond it. Nothing fancy, but clean and functional with all the basic appliances. Noah squealed and reached toward a colorful playmat laid out in the corner of the living room, complete with some soft toys. Lena set him down gently, watching as he crawled eagerly toward a stuffed elephant. "I hope it's okay," Daniel said, setting down the box. "I tried to keep everything simple but comfortable." He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking more like the parking guard she'd first met than the billionaire businessman he was. Lena's voice cracked. "It's perfect." She walked slowly around the room, touching the back of the sofa, the curtains, taking in every detail. "I can't believe this is real." Daniel smiled, heading back out to grab more boxes from the moving truck. Lena followed him, Noah safely playing within view through the doorway. "You didn't have to furnish it," she said as they walked down the stairs. "The apartment itself was more than enough." "I wanted to," Daniel replied simply. "Besides, every home needs the basics." He lifted another box, this one containing Noah's clothes. "And before you worry, this isn't charity, Lena. The rent will come from your salary, just at a fair rate. You earn this." Lena nodded, picking up a lighter box of toiletries. They had talked about this extensively over the past few days, how she would maintain her independence while accepting help, how this was about justice rather than handouts. Back in the apartment, they found Noah had discovered the elephant made squeaking sounds when squeezed. His delighted giggles filled the space, transforming it instantly from a mere apartment into something that felt like home. They continued bringing boxes up, working in comfortable silence punctuated by Noah's happy sounds. Each trip revealed more of the thoughtful touches Daniel had included: a small bookshelf with some children's books, a high chair in the kitchen, safety locks already installed on the cabinets. In Noah's room, Lena discovered a beautiful wooden crib with a mobile hanging above it. Soft blankets were folded nearby, and a rocking chair sat in the corner. The walls were decorated with gentle animal prints, and a baby monitor was already set up on a small side table. "The crib," she whispered, running her hand along the smooth wood. "It's just like the one I saw in that store window downtown." She turned to Daniel, who was arranging Noah's clothes in the dresser. "How did you know?" "I saw you looking at it one morning," he admitted, "when you thought I was in the parking booth. You stood there for so long, just staring at it." I remembered. Tears welled in Lena's eyes, but these were different from the desperate ones she'd shed in her car all those nights ago. These were tears of gratitude, of hope, of a burden finally lifting. They moved through the afternoon, unpacking boxes and arranging belongings. Daniel showed her how all the appliances worked, made sure she knew how to adjust the thermostat, and explained the security system. He kept his movements calm and steady, giving her space to absorb everything while staying close enough to help. As evening approached, they ordered pizza, a moving day tradition, Daniel insisted, and sat on the floor of the living room since Lena's boxes were still on the dining table. Noah sat in his new high chair, happily making a mess with a slice Daniel had cut into tiny pieces. "I still can't believe you did all this," Lena said, watching Noah grab another piece of pizza with his chubby fingers. "Not just the apartment, but everything. Standing up to CPS, using your influence to help us stay together." "I meant what I said in court," Daniel replied, his voice gentle. "Every child deserves a safe home with someone who loves them. You're an amazing mother, Lena. You just needed a fair chance." They cleaned up after dinner, working together to wipe down Noah's face and hands. Daniel showed her how the bathroom's child-proof faucet worked as they gave Noah a quick bath, the baby splashing happily in the warm water. As night fell, Lena changed Noah into his pajamas while Daniel cleared away the last of the moving boxes. The apartment was beginning to feel lived in, with small touches of their life already visible. Noah's toys in their basket, Lena's favorite mug on the kitchen counter, a family photo she'd kept safe through everything now sitting on the bookshelf. In Noah's room, Lena gently placed him in his new crib. He yawned, already heavy-lidded from the excitement of the day. She switched on the small nightlight, casting a soft glow across the room. Daniel sat quietly in the rocking chair, watching as she tucked the blanket around her son. Noah's eyes drifted closed, his breathing becoming deep and steady. Lena stood at the crib, one hand resting on its rail, taking in the peaceful sight of her baby sleeping safely in their new home. The relief and gratitude overwhelmed her, and she whispered softly, "We're safe now." Daniel smiled softly from his place in the rocking chair, his presence a quiet reminder that they weren't alone anymore. Morning sunlight danced through the kitchen window of Lena's apartment, casting warm patterns across the worn but clean linoleum floor. 6 weeks had passed since moving day, and the space had transformed from just an apartment into something more precious, a real home. Lena hummed softly as she stirred pancake batter in a mixing bowl, the familiar motion soothing and domestic. The kitchen wasn't fancy, just basic white cabinets and standard appliances, but it was hers, and that made all the difference. Noah sat contentedly in his blue plastic high chair, playing with colorful plastic blocks and occasionally dropping them with a delighted giggle. "Those are some impressive architectural skills there, little man," Lena said, smiling as Noah stacked another block precariously on top of his wobbly tower. He responded with happy babbling, showing off his 2 tiny front teeth. The gentle whir of the ceiling fan mixed with the sizzle of pancakes hitting the hot griddle. These ordinary morning sounds, once taken for granted, now felt like precious gifts. Lena closed her eyes briefly, remembering cold mornings in her car, the panic of wondering where Noah's next meal would come from. The contrast made her heart swell with gratitude. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called out, knowing exactly who it would be. Daniel entered, looking decidedly more relaxed than his corporate billionaire image would suggest, wearing jeans and a simple button-down shirt. In his hands, he carried a bouquet of cheerful yellow daisies and white carnations. "Good morning," he said warmly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Something smells amazing in here. Noah and I are making breakfast," Lena replied, turning back to flip a pancake. "Well, I'm making breakfast. Noah's building skyscrapers." "Bah, bah, bah," Noah exclaimed at the sight of Daniel, reaching out with grabby hands. Daniel set the flowers on the counter and walked over to Noah's high chair. "Those are some impressive engineering skills you've got there, buddy." He carefully adjusted a teetering block, making Noah clap with delight. Lena found a simple glass vase under the sink and arranged the flowers, placing them on the small kitchen table. "These are beautiful, thank you. But you didn't have to bring anything." "I wanted to," Daniel said simply. He pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat down, his expression brightening. "Actually, I came by to share some news. The first phase of the affordable housing project is ahead of schedule. We'll be able to help 30 families move in by the end of next month." Lena paused in her pancake making, turning to look at him. "Really? That's wonderful!" She could hear the genuine excitement in her own voice. These weren't just abstract numbers anymore. She knew firsthand what stable housing meant to a struggling family. "The application process is already underway," Daniel continued, his voice warm with purpose. "We're prioritizing single parents and families with young children. The support services will be in place too. Childcare assistance, job training programs, everything we talked about." Lena transferred the last pancake onto a plate and brought it to the table, along with syrup and butter. She cut up a small pancake into tiny pieces for Noah, letting them cool on his tray. "It's amazing how much has changed in such a short time," she said softly. Daniel watched as she moved around the kitchen with quiet confidence, so different from the desperate mother he'd first met in the parking lot. "You inspired a lot of it, you know," he said quietly. "You and Noah, seeing your strength, your dignity, even in the hardest moments, it showed me what really matters." Lena felt her cheeks warm at his words as she sat down across from him. "We were just trying to survive," she said, but there was no bitterness in her voice anymore, just reflection. "And now?" Daniel asked, accepting the plate she passed him. She looked around her kitchen, at Noah happily mushing pancake pieces, at the sunshine streaming through windows she could call her own, at the fresh flowers brightening her table. "Now we're living," she answered simply. "Really living, not just surviving." Noah chose that moment to let out a peal of laughter, reaching for Daniel with sticky fingers. Without hesitation, Daniel scooped him up, seemingly unconcerned about syrup getting on his shirt. "To think I almost lost him," Lena said softly, watching them. "If you hadn't helped with the custody case." "You never would have lost him," Daniel interrupted gently. "Your love for Noah shines through everything you do. That's what the judge saw, not my testimony, but your strength as a mother." Lena felt tears prick at her eyes, but these were different from the desperate tears she'd shed in her car those many nights ago. These were tears of gratitude, of hope fulfilled. Sunlight poured through the window, warming the small kitchen. Noah babbled happily in Daniel's lap, reaching for another piece of pancake. Without thinking, Lena reached across the table and took Daniel's free hand in hers. In that touch was everything she couldn't quite put into words. Gratitude for his help, yes, but something deeper, too. Recognition of how far they'd come. Both of them. He'd shed his lonely tower of wealth to find purpose in helping others. She'd moved from despair to hope, from surviving to thriving. Noah's delighted giggle filled the room as he successfully grabbed another piece of pancake, his joy infectious and pure. This laughter, free and unworried, was more than just a happy baby's sound. It was proof that lives could change, that faith could be rewarded, that compassion could rewrite destinies. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Lena Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please, don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.